Standing in an open patch of grasses with the rain beginning to thicken, I stare up and catch raindrops in my eyes. A lovely sight. Waltzing through trees and slender raindrops are now sliding through the atmosphere as they do on the window glass 1 mile at a time when I look out towards the west. Out yonder beyond these mudded fields and tree-lined hills of slow Indiana, I see the fall of the west.
Now as we turn in here, General Motors owned from this corner on. This is now a community hospital facility. And this is the road I used to come in on to go to Plant 11. And right in this area is where I parked my car, along this curve.
Right, it's this parking lot with weeds
Yeah.
sprouting up.
And them parking lots was full.
Woo! Congratulations to all of our winners, our top 50 winners. Joe Ellen and Sonny started this car show.
He's had the car for 47 years. Look at that, it's beautiful. Wow, this is yours?
Yeah, she's been through a lot.
Now, did you do all the work on it? Or?
Actually, well, it was me and my son.
Right there.
He's, yeah, right here he is. He painted it
Yeah,
Oh, really?
Did all the paint and body right at home.
about 7 years ago.
Oh,
7 years.
how does it run?
Fantastic.
Oh, this used to be big car country.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anderson was a GM town.
Oh,
That's why we went
major
to
GM
Anderson.
town.
Yeah.
It was,
Everybody worked there.
it was the heart.
Yeah.
But people put bread on their table,
Yep.
you know.
It's crazy because the GM plant was here forever. You know, they tore it down, and Ford, you know, that's dealership. They actually bought the land and they put their brand new Ford dealership right where GM used to be.
Is that right?
Yeah. So it's just kind of weird looking over at it. It's like,
Right.
wow. You know,
not-
GM
not
runs
normal.
deep around here.
Oh, yeah.
For us anyway.
Now right here is the front side of where I used to work. Those two dealerships are sitting about where the plant's set.
Great buildings, like General Motors' Delco Remy division. Statistics, world's oldest and largest producer of automotive electrical equipment. General Motors' Guide Lamp division. Statistics, world's largest manufacturer of automotive lighting equipment. From 100 towns in 20 counties, they come to work in the plants of Anderson, to share in the opportunity to make a good living.
Over the past 3 decades, Anderson, Indiana has lost tens of thousands of high-paying manufacturing jobs. At its peak in the 1970s, 1 in 3 people in Anderson worked at General Motors. 70,000 people lived here. Now the city's population has been reduced to 55,000.
But this was a booming, that was the first enclosed mall in Indiana.
What's it like now?
I don't know how to keep the doors open.
Are there a lot of empty stores?
Oh yeah,
This is gas stations
that's a
closed
gas
down.
station.
Closed
closed.
down. The guns and ammo is still open.
Yeah, guns and ammo, you gotta have that. There's a liquor store. How many of them you ever see closed?
Oh,
You know, you don't see liquor stores closed.
that takes some work.
Dad worked at GM for years.
Your father did?
Yeah. Yeah, I worked in glass units at Guide Lamp.
Yep.
And he putting the tail lights, you know, together from Cadillacs to Impalas to whatever it was. But like everything else, it went out. But he retired from there, so. My whole dad's side of the family retired from Delco pretty much, and guys.
Really, when it comes to grandparents and everybody
Everyone
worked
worked
there.
there. My dad
so big,
was
they didn't
from
know the face.
up north, and he was younger. He was 24 years old, and he come looking for a job. And Remy, Delco Remy out there, they'd have a sign, work, you know, begging you to work, and they just give you everything they had. You know, they really build it up like that. But that's he got there, and then his whole life, and retired from there.
Yeah.
He said they just hold a sign out there by the road and say, "Come on in."
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Then later on, you tried to get on, you couldn't.
So, you know, you had that kind of opportunity for your father, or maybe even for your generation. How did it affect young people when it was gone?
Well, I don't know if it did because they didn't have it.
Yeah, we didn't have
Anyway.
it. You don't know what you don't have. You know,
Yeah.
that's true. But I mean, hearing how good it was though,
Yeah.
makes us wish, man, I wish there was jobs like that around here. People actually could work and retire from somewhere. You got to be kidding.
Have
Well,
security.
with a pension.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's what's scary.
Yeah.
It's a security, knowing you're going to have something.
Oh,
Yeah,
Just
anymore
like,
there's no security.
No security.
wanna
Are
start
people
driving
pretty
in
pro-union around here?
I really don't know.
It used to be.
Used to be.
I think people have different views on it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think the union kind of destroyed GM.
In what
because
way?
of-
How?
They kept wanting more money, more money, more money.
Yeah.
You know, more benefits, more benefits. And Dad said that's what kind of crushed him. Because they just kept wanting more and more and more.
That makes sense. What do you feel when you drive back through here?
Oh, I get sick.
Yeah.
I get, I want to, when I go by Plant 20, I want to turn in.
Oh.
You know, and it's been, I've been out of the plant 11 years. I'm a proud member of UAW Local 662, at one time the home of 14,700 members. I worked for GM for 42 2/10 years, and the last place I worked was Plant 20.
Where's Plant 20?
Right behind me.
A Chinese tire importer purchased Plant 20 earlier this year. It plans to employ, however, no more than 40 people. It's one of over 15 foreign companies that have located plants in the city since the departure of GM, including a Japanese auto part manufacturer. Most rely not on workers, but on automation. Today, Anderson's largest employers are the city's hospitals, followed by Nestle and the local casino.
What's happened to Anderson with the destruction of the GM plants?
Well, the loss of all the jobs in GM and the associated facilities, such as the trucking companies, the repair shops, the logistic people, all those connected units, cafeteria workers, it affected a lot of people in our community.
And what have the effects been?
Well, the people that had rights under our UAW agreements, a lot of them have relocated to protect their seniority at the plant.
And most of the former UAW members now are retirees.
Retirees, yes.
They're often the only ones in Anderson who are pulling down a living wage.
Well, when you consider our pensions and Social Security, we make more than a lot of people that go to work every day. We're proud of those benefits. They was earned, but we need replacements for us.
I'm going to stop by about every booth and see what I can do. So right now, beggars can't be choosers. I'm gonna have to take what I can get.
You've come to this job fair looking for work. You're unemployed?
Yes.
You have a family?
Yes.
How many children?
6.
Does your wife work?
No, she's disabled.
And when you look back on all of your employment, has it been a struggle?
Yeah, just getting underbid has been a large amount of the problem. It's just ever since the economy crashed, people are pretty much working for pennies. So
What's the longest you've gone without work?
I've had 3 jobs in the last month. I had to drywall a house, the lower floor of a house. I had to lay a floor for somebody, and I had to replace the plumbing in a bathroom.
And how much money did you make?
Off of those 3 jobs, probably around $450.
And that's the only money you brought in
Yeah.
for the month. How has this affected your children?
They're not wearing Abercrombie. It kind of depresses me because I feel bad taking them places because they want this and they want that, and Dad can't give it to them right this minute. And it's just trying to make something else happen.
The primary goal for JobSource is to help people become self-sufficient. So we provide a multitude of programs and activities that work towards that end.
Do you have an unemployment rate for Anderson?
Currently, it's dipped below 5%, so it's around 3.5%.
Oh.
But sometimes those numbers aren't always exact with the population because it doesn't take into account the people who have quit looking for work or people who have just given up.
Do you think that's a significant percentage of the population?
I think in certain areas of the city, it can be much higher than is reflected in the unemployment rate.
The youth have nowhere to go. They have no hope. They have no desires to do anything.
Well, why don't they have a desire to do anything?
It's a struggle to get a job. it's a struggle for them to get a job. You know, it seems like we're on separate playing fields.
When you say it's not a level playing field, what do you mean?
I think our kids have to work twice as hard in order for them to be able to do what other kids are doing. Or they got to be
twice about black kids,
right?
At the economic decline, the black community is disproportionately been affected.
We have been truly affected by that.
I mean, especially since you've lived your life here, you remember what it was like. Your father was a community activist. What's been the hardest for you over these past few decades?
Well, I lost a son because of drugs.
You did?
I did. He was killed by another boy. So, and then I had one incarcerated. They came from good families. They come from a different upbringing. It wasn't something that was encouraged. It wasn't an atmosphere that they were exposed to. It was part of being out there and making some bad choices. So I think that, you know, our kids are making bad choices, but at the same time, there's just no hope. My one son that was incarcerated, he spent 2 years going to college. So if you're going to incarcerate them for a minimum of time, then help rehabilitate them.
And you're here at the job fair.
Correct.
Looking for applicants.
Applicants, correctional officers. We're in a position to make a job offer today.
And talk a little bit about salary, benefits.
The salary with the department, they're starting out at $14.16 an hour. Benefits are from day one.
And yet you have a hard time finding people who will take these jobs. You have a lot of, how many jobs are you currently trying to fill?
Carlos, what do you think? Our facility alone, buddy? Well, our facility alone, our vacancy. 100? 100?
Just?
Yeah, I would.
Just in your facility?
Just our facility.
Now, why are those jobs? I mean, given the high unemployment, the low, we've interviewed people in Anderson that are working full-time jobs at $7.50 an hour. Why is it hard to fill those jobs?
My personal opinion, I think the work ethic is just, it's not what it used to be. When you agreed to take a job from your employer, then you worked for that employer, and it really meant something. You didn't really call off sick when you wasn't sick. You came to work. You felt an obligation towards them, towards the other people that you work with. That caliber of individual is just really, really tough to find anymore.
I mean, talk a little bit about the work environment, because it can be difficult. Why?
Not uncommon for an employee that has some time in, that's allowed to work by themselves. Not uncommon for them to be in a room with maybe 100, 150, offenders, and it's just them.
But recidivism's still high, I think, nationally. Nationally, I think it's like 76% or something. I'm thinking if you dropped your prison population significantly, this would affect work for people like you.
Right. The only drop in population has just been the staffing population.
That's right.
Yeah, that's really something, because doing the job fairs and things, we tell people, from day one, this is a job that you make a career right out of the get-go. Hopefully, we're looking for career people and not just job people. So so ideally, it's a younger person that has maybe worked a little while, that kind of sees what's going on and has their head screwed on straight and says, you know what, I need a career, I need a future, I need something that will always be there. Sad to say, prisons will always be here.
Anderson, Indiana is one of many towns and cities that have seen their industry move overseas. Since 2000, the U.S. has lost 5 million manufacturing jobs. 50 miles south of Anderson, Carrier employees are enduring the plague of deindustrialization.
It became clear that the best way to stay competitive and protect the business for long term is to move production from our facility in Indianapolis to Monterrey, Mexico.
The members were pissed. When Carrier announced that they were going to completely shut that plant down and that it didn't have anything to do with the members, with the work that was being done in that facility, that it only had it was a business decision, is what they told us.
The wages in Monterey are less than $3 an hour, no benefits. The wages at Carrier, for the most part, average about $20 to $21 an hour, and benefits. Trump, during the campaign process, he got mentioned to Carrier, that if he was president, they wouldn't be moving that facility.
If I were in office right now, Carrier would not be leaving Indiana. That I can tell you. That I can tell you.
Then next thing we know, Trump and Pence are coming here to Indianapolis and announced that he had saved 1,100 jobs, which was an out-and-out lie.
United Technologies and Carrier stepped it up, and now they're keeping actually the numbers over 1,100 people, which is so great,
Carrier began laying off employees in July. They will cut 632 jobs. Only 800 will remain at the plant. Indiana will receive $7 million in state income tax refunds over a decade in exchange for company investments of $16 million. The chief executive of United Technologies, however, admits that most of that money will be spent on automation.
How do you answer people who say, well, unions demanded so much from these corporations that they drove them out to places like Mexico?
I would say that's a lie. And people ought to understand that, because all you got to do is take a look at Carrier. A company that makes $56 million a year, it has to be greed.
It's just corporate greed. They don't care about what they're doing to their employees, our members, their families, the communities, the schools, the businesses. They don't care, because bottom line is it's $65 million a year that they're going to be saving.
What changes have you seen in Carrier, particularly in terms of unionized work?
Well, the union is still doing very well on the inside of Carrier. They passed the right to work law here, and right now we currently have about 50 that currently don't belong to the union. If something comes up on the inside of the plant, they're still entitled to union representation. They're entitled to all of it for free.
But they're not paying union dues?
But they're not paying union dues.
Why do you think that right to work law exists?
I think it exists to weaken the union.
You've seen a demonization of unions. Less than 10% of the American workforce is unionized.
We'll be back. We'll be back. When people get pushed so far, they'll organize and become part of the House of Labor.
To what extent has that history been erased from American consciousness?
Well, they like for us to forget it all. We go back talking about Debs, and Debs was considered the father of organized labor in this country. Now his home's a National Historical Shrine in Terre Haute, Indiana, because he stood up and spoke out for the people, the little people, for the masses.
This was Appeal to Reason, which was a socialist weekly. At its peak, it had between 700,000 and 800,000 subscriptions.
They shut this newspaper down, just like they shut the masses down and ultimately shut down the whole radical labor movement that Debs had started. Well, and yet, as Debs understood, there were only two institutional mechanisms by which people could fight back against the abuses of capitalism, and that was number one, unions, and number two, government.
Absolutely.
And of course, we've seen an assault, a destruction of the unions, as well as an assault against government, which when it functions is the only institution ordinary people like us have when it functions. It's not functioning now, to protect ourselves from corporate abuse.
Absolutely. And the attacks on the democratic aspects of our government is especially concerning.
I mean, what I loved about him is that he understood that you can't be a socialist unless you're an anti-imperialist. So all of those resources sucked out of society to go towards war impoverished your society, which is, of course, where we are today.
Here's another abandoned church. See, there's a church for sale.
A church for sale, yeah.
That's an unusual deal.
Yeah. This is the first day of your retirement.
This is, yes. And I didn't think I'd be wearing this today.
I was the pastor here at St. Mary's for 29 years, from 83 to 13.
And you were here for all of the plant closures. You watched that whole process.
It was already in action when I got here in 84. It was moving. By the time I left, they were all gone.
What did you see happening with the loss of those jobs?
In the parish, it's like pulling the whole support system out from under them, and there's a certain anomie, you might call it, that sets in. Maybe lack of direction, or helplessness, or the system failed me, and I have nothing to fall back on. So.
Tell me about capitalism as a Christian.
Well, our society is so embedded in capitalism that I think we, instead of seeing the dignity of the human person, we see the human person as a machine that can work for us.
For here's a town, 100 towns that welcome hard, honest work, where a man can live in security and dignity today and after today.
This was a grocery store about 6 months ago. The grocery stores have been closed.
Oh, really?
Now we've got big block areas where they don't have access to a grocery store. You'll still see the Marsh sign up here.
Oh yeah, store closing.
We have been shopping here for 38 years, and this is a sad day. When GM left, it just slowly deteriorated. So it's been a long time coming, but then it's just continual.
So look at that house.
Yeah, blighted. There's one that had the grass mowed for 5 years. And what it does when it starts, it runs down the homes that are next to it.
It's a little sad to see all the vacant buildings and lots, but the depressed real estate market also allows us to do this. We couldn't buy a place like this for $20,000 in very many communities.
We bought an industrial building in sort of a poor neighborhood in Anderson, and it was kind of like a warehouse when we bought it, and we've been renovating it mostly ourselves.
Now we're trying to build community with events like the concerts and potlucks. We started off as part of the Catholic worker movement, so we were in that tradition, a house of hospitality. So we were welcoming in people who needed a place to stay for some length of time to help them get back on their feet. But that kind of didn't work out as well as we had hopes.
Why?
We weren't really prepared to deal with some of the needs that people had.
It got pretty chaotic,
And was it
as you
just
can
you
imagine.
were dealing with mental illness?
Mostly mental illness, a lot of addiction, of course.
Or is there a lot of drug use in Anderson?
Yeah. I'm not sure how it compares to other cities around here, but it seems like a lot.
Why do you think that is?
I think people are depressed. So they feel like...
I just want to say good night.
Oh, it was nice to meet you. Whoop.
Oh, getting hot. It's hot.
No, that's how you keep the hair off your knuckles.
That'll do it.
It's cheaper than a manicure.
Have a good night, Sam.
All right, buddy.
Thanks for coming over.
All right.
Have a good night.
Y'all have a good night, young lady.
So depressed. Why?
I think Anderson has really bad self-esteem. A lot of young people I know they're working for $9-10 an hour, and then moving from job to job every 6 months, and basically enough money to buy alcohol and cigarettes and pay the rent. So, yeah.
Why do you think the self-esteem is so low?
I don't know, like my mom's generation grew up thinking that they were going to have a solid job and that they were just, they're just going to be able to start a job and have a good livelihood. And that's not the case. Just because you want to work really hard doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make it.
Well, Barbara Henrich, I think, points out nobody works harder than the poor.
I was born 3 pounds, and I was not destined for this world, and then somehow, one way or another, I came out and did the best I could, and that's all I've done. I'll never say I'm good at anything, but at least I have I have the ability to think and speak and act, and always find something. I've done manual labor, I've done medical, partial. I'm not going to say it's anything genuine, but food service. I've done sales, but
Do you have a job now? Or?
I don't. Currently, I'm actually working on a small album, but other than that, I just play for money. I sell a lot of odds and ends. I've been doing that for years. I found out apparently I have a knack to collect things, and just apparently they're used to somebody, but paying. I'm just paying my way in some way, either with food or with entertainment in some way to somebody. So,
what do you think of capitalism?
I don't think I'm enough of the system to actually. I don't have enough of a view of it. I've tried. I've never seen the heights of it. I guarantee you that. But I've seen the bottom of it.
What does it look like? What's the bottom look like?
I've seen kids, just damn near naked, like running around out in neighborhoods even like this. I've seen, parents who kind of turn on each other, and kids have to suffer for that, or neighbors, or I've been up before where I just hear yelling all night because, it's matters of money, or, they're flushing away money on something else, and it's always the kids that suffer. I do try and think from their perspective. I always have been a perspective thinker, but it comes down to kids. That's going to be more people like the people I knew, people I went to school with, where they just feel defeated. If you grew up in a household where it's just nothing but violence and you see defeatedness and squabbling and grabbing at straws, then you're going to grow up like that. You're going to keep going for those minimal jobs. You're going to keep fighting yourself or fighting a system you can't beat. I think that's some of Anderson is, a good portion of it, but I've seen a lot of other people. I've seen poets, I've seen phenomenal guitarists, vocalists, percussionists, people who have tricks of the trade, jugglers.
Buildings gone and now empty lots, but the land has always been there. Not one thing has changed. I might be older, but damn, the days are only shorter than before. And poetry definitely has helped restore my dignity, helped me as a young man I am, helped me find out about myself and continue to evolve myself. So this is America. This is society in the flesh. Attached to tech and broken-spirited ragged, suits, slick hair, slick shoes. There's youth in the old who clamp to the good old days, which is over all the same.
It's the history of the labor movement.
And yeah, of Debs and the labor movement.
And this is from, of course, he's put on trial in, was it 1918?
Yes.
For denouncing the war, denouncing the draft. And he gets up in the trial, and that's the great quote. While there is a lower class, I'm in it. While there is a criminal element, I am of it. While there is a soul in prison, I am not free. Well, there's a reason why they don't want anyone to know who he is.
But I feel somewhat hopeful about Anderson. I think there's a lot of people that they want to bring something back. But yeah, it'll never be what it was.
So long, been good to know ya. We're so long, it's been good to know ya. This dusty old dust has taken my hope. Gotta be drifting along.